founder and CEO of A-Rod Corp. And baseball world champion, Alex Rodriguez.
Hey guys. Good afternoon, everybody. What a great looking crowd. I want to tell you about the worst day of my life. It was the morning of January 10th, 2014, 10:30 a.m. in the morning. I'm laying in bed, waiting for the call that you never want to receive. The phone rang 3 times. I was sweating, super nervous. My palms. I pick up the phone, and it's my former teammate, Tony Clark, who also is the head of our players union. We talk for 5 or 6 minutes. It feels like 5 or 6 months. And this is the call that's going to tell me how many games is the final verdict for my suspension. And while I was hoping it was 50, maybe 100 games, he told me it was 162. The entire season. The longest suspension in Major League Baseball history for PED use. As he told me the news, I fell to the ground, and then I started to cry, and cried. The next 10 days, I did not leave my home. I tried to grow a beard. I was embarrassed. I was in a deep, ugly black hole, self-pity, victim, blaming everyone except, of course, myself. I blamed lawyers, agents, managers, publicists, you, the guy that mic'd me, the folks backstage, everybody. "60 Minutes" ran one of the worst pieces I've ever seen. Talk about unflattering. It was really bad. And I deserved every single word of it. What I realized was that the 162 was actually the biggest blessing. It was a blessing in disguise. I needed the entire season, a sabbatical, to get my life in order, to press the pause button and rethink things. And sometimes you have a house, and you paint the house, and you fix the windows, and you fix the roof, and you fix the roof. In my case, you needed to tear the entire house down and start again 1 brick at a time. I turned the lens inward and did a lot of work internally to think about what are the things in my childhood that continue to make me make these stupid, silly mistakes. Think about this for 1 minute. Hundreds of millions of dollars guaranteed if I never play again. In essence, pocket aces. And I'm thinking I'm the only jackass that has pocket aces and figures out a way to lose the hand. There was an evening I knew I had to get a plan in order to come back to playing baseball. Forget baseball, just to get my life back in place. I needed to rest, recover, and train. I hadn't played baseball in a year and a half. Just finished 2 hip surgeries, 2 knee surgeries, suspension, fighting the entire world. And I needed time to recover emotionally, physically, and everything else. One holiday that December, in New York City, I go to a holiday party in downtown. I remember like it was yesterday. Mid-30s, rainy, cold, and this was a holiday party that I always attended and I did not want to miss. And I'm embarrassed. I'm sitting in the corner quietly, hoping nobody sees me. I'm having a little vodka club soda in the back. And I see none other than Mr. Robert Kraft. Robert comes over, and we start shooting a little bit. I can tell his disappointment. And I can tell that he's not understanding what I'm doing or what I've done. Not only did I make mistakes, but then I doubled down and made it worse. The doubling down was actually worse than the actual mistake. So there was mistakes on top of mistakes. And he said, Alex, you're a good guy that's done some really stupid things and made it worse by the way you're handling it. Then he said, I wish that was vodka. Then he said, Alex, you need to start getting rid of some of these people that are advising you. I don't know who they are. You need to start looking in the mirror and understand that you're in control. You're in control of this case. You're in control of your life. You're in control of your baseball career. You're handing it over to people. I said, you need to start building bridges, not burning bridges. And it was so simple. And I went home that night. I keep a notepad next to my bed. If I ever get a good thought, I always write it down because it doesn't come very often. And then the next day I went and laminated. I didn't have a job, I was suspended. I went, I got it laminated, I made like 3 copies, and I put it in my wallet. I will show you, but I don't have my wallet. And I carried it around, I've been there for 5 years. And it's just 3 or 4 messages that I got from that conversation that really made a big impact. And I started putting that to work. I saw Robert 2 weeks ago. I pulled that out of my wallet. He couldn't believe it. He was pumped. As was I. I realized that the only way out had to be with surrounding myself with great people, being grateful and appreciative. I remember when I came back, I made one promise to myself. I said, no matter what happens out on the field, I'm going to be happy. I'm going to be grateful. As I leave my apartment from the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and I drive through Washington Heights, where I was born, through the Bronx, and get to this amazing cathedral called Yankee Stadium, to be one of 750. One of 750 that I get to play Major League Baseball. I did it for 23 years. And then to be one of 25 that gets to wear the pinstripes, just like Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig and Reggie Jackson and Joe DiMaggio. I'm 40 years old. I'm hitting third. And I remember a couple times, boy, when they take something away, boy, you know how sweet it is and how special it is. And every day I didn't know how long it was gonna last. And I remember looking in the mirror sometimes. The game would start about 7:07. I was DHing, I was already 40, and I would look in the mirror and I'd pinstripes, and I would turn around, number 13, and I'm like, wow, this is so cool. This is so cool. The same uniform I wore when I was 7, 8 years old at the Boys and Girls Club. So my promise was 0 for 4 or 4 for 4. I like Journey. I like Kings of Leon. I like Sinatra. I said, no matter what, we're going to play it on the way to the park, and we're going to play it on the way back. But either way, we're going to be happy, appreciative, and grateful. And then the other part of that was, every day, no matter what, I was going to sign at least 25 autographs. And it's because I wanted to understand that it was all about the fans and really appreciating that you guys are the shareholders of our game. If the fans don't watch, if the fans don't show up, there is no career, there is no Major League Baseball. So it's always about the fans and consumers. Something I really didn't understand pre-suspension. So that in that 1 year, I learned so many great things. The problem with 25 autographs is that you need 25 people to want your autograph. So in 2015, it was hard to make my quota, even though I really wanted to. And I promise you, I would go by fans. I would be like at 18, and I'm counting. Now I gotta be honest with 18, and I would walk around and say. And finally, I would just go over and sign, even though they didn't want me to sign. One day I was stuck at 23. I'm walking. Now it's like 12 o'clock. I'm driving home. I stop at a bodega. The guy wasn't from this country. He had no idea who I was. I said, do you have the New York Post, the Daily News? You like the Yankees? Anyways, and what I realized, I said, I wish I had this attitude for the first 21 years of my career. But better late than never. The hardest thing I had to do in this journey was make amends with the people that I hurt and disappointed. From my mother, to my daughters, to my friends, to my partners. I hurt a lot of people. And I had a really, really hard time with that. I wrote down a list. Again, I write everything down. That's why I always have a pen. And I wrote down about 8 names. I think it was 8 or 9. And I said, these are the 8 or 9 names that I feel compelled to call them at my darkest moment to hear from me. Not an email, not a text, but my voice. My voice with pain and regret. And I wanted them to hear at the lowest point, and I wanted to apologize person to person. And I thought this would take 3 weeks. It took 3 months. I would pick up the phone, dial the number, hang up. Then I got tough enough where it would ring once or twice, and then I would hang up and say, oh boy, they weren't there. I tried. I finally got a hold of all 9, and it was an incredibly difficult exercise. But when I think about being accountable and apologizing for your mistakes, it's amazing how forgiving people can be. And to this day, all 9 are still friends and partners and 2 of my bankers. And they say that those 9 calls That particular call was the most impressive thing they've ever seen me do. Not the 696 home runs or the 2,000 RBIs, the WAR championship. It's at my weakest moment that I was able to stand up and do the right thing. And then, by far the hardest thing I had to do is I had to come and be straight with my daughters. Natasha's 13, as you see them behind me, and Ella's 10. And they were much younger at the time. And I had to tell them what Daddy did, the mistake that I made, and the consequences. And I thought this was an important drill because they're getting to an age now where they're going to be teenagers, and I'm going to want them to be honest with Daddy. And I'm very fortunate to have a great co-parent in Cynthia, who has a master's in psychology. And I said, Cynthia, I want to do this with the girls. I said, why don't we pick them up at school and we do this at my office? And again, I thought it would take 3 months. It took 9 months. And we sat them down, and I said, Cynthia, here's the drill. I'm going to be talking to them, and two things are going to happen. I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to get past first base, so maybe relief, and then I can close like Mariano. But they're going to be listening to Dad, but they're going to be looking at you. And it's super important that we're aligned, and our body language reflects that. Because kids at this age, they can mind map us at a level that we wouldn't even dream about. So, of course, as prediction, I couldn't even get to first base before I broke down. Cynthia did a phenomenal job of carrying the ball for me. And then I came in and closed. And in a nutshell, they gave me a hug and said, Dad, we forgive you. And go get him. I think you can still do it. And I knew then that I was going to give it one more go. As I get ready to go to Tampa, it's a 5-hour drive from my home in Miami. I call my mother. I say, Mom, I'm off tomorrow. New York paper says they run a poll. Can an A-Rod make the team? 95.6 say no. I think 2% said yes, and 2 were undecided. But I wasn't counting or being competitive or anything. I put that in my wallet too. And I called my mother. I said, Mom, I'm off tomorrow to camp. Just want to tell you that I love you. And she says, Son, we love you too. Don't put too much pressure on you. Hey, and if you can't do it, don't worry. We still love you. Come back home. I said, okay, great. Thanks. The next morning, take the girls to school, pick them up, give them a big hug, and I'm off. And girls say, Daddy, we love you. Go hit home runs. But just remember, if you can't do it, don't do anything crazy. Just come back home. I go, okay. And off I go, 5-hour drive. And what was great about that year is I had no expectations. I reconnected with my childhood. And here goes 22 years, and I'm really playing for a lot. I'm playing for a lot because, not for all of you out there, but also for me. I needed to know what was the real. And not only did I make the team, not only did we go back to the postseason, I hit third all year, I hit 33 home runs, and it ended up being one of the 2 best years of my entire career. One was at 19, when I almost won the MVP when I was in Seattle, and the other one was at 40, after the suspension, after my hip surgery, after my knee surgery. And that arc of 19 and 40 told me all I needed to know. And what that message was to me was that all these mistakes that I made could have been avoided because it was always inside of me. And it still is. And it's inside of all of you. So I wish you guys all the best, and thank you for hearing my story.
Alex, that was so heartfelt and beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing those words. Will you stay for a couple minutes to have a little chat? Okay, these guys are gonna bring the chairs in. Can we give Alex Rodriguez another round of applause for that?
Thank you. Thank you.
Really, you have a fan who wants a baseball sign. Come on over here if we... That's for her son, Edwin, Alex.
Okay.
Can you catch it? Can you catch it?
24 left. Here you go.
Have a seat.
Right, thank you.
So I know we're all feeling incredibly touched by the words that you just shared. And it sounds like you really went to such a dark place. But in hindsight, do you think that what you went through was a blessing in disguise for you?
Yeah, you know, when I look back now, and maybe it's too soon now, but maybe another 5 years, I'm going to look back and say, it's the best thing that ever happened to me. Because it made me pause and take a time out and reevaluate everything. And like I said, tear the house down. And because of that, it made me, for I say the back nine of my life, to do things the right way, be accountable. The most important thing I am is I'm a father to 2 beautiful girls. And if I cannot be accountable, it's going to be hard there when I sit there at night and put them to bed and take them to school for them to respect their dad. Way more important than hitting a baseball.
Yeah. You mentioned that your mentor, one of your mentors said to you, you need new people around you. So now, how do you go about finding the right people? How do you know that you have the right people around you?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. And I was just at Stanford this morning where we do a lot of our recruiting. And my CEO back here is Jeff Lee, who Stanford undergrad, Stanford Business. But I end up actually hiring people that they lead with character and truth. And people that complement my set of skills. You know, if I'm a pitcher, I'm going to get a hitter. If I'm a cleanup hitter, I'm going to get a closer. But the most important thing, they have to have incredible character. And I go through a major vetting process before we do any of that.
I think it's really easy for people, once they're feeling a lot of success, to really start feeling themselves, right? Yeah. How do you remain humble? Like, what's your secret now to remaining humble?
All you got to go is on YouTube and put on that 60-minute piece. Or just remember that I couldn't get 25 autographs in a stadium that fits 50,000 people. I mean, it's really not that hard, you know. And I'm 43 now, and boy, I wish I knew how stupid I was at 23, right? And the older you get, the more you realize the amount of things that you don't know. And you think about your parents, you think about your daughters, your responsibility in this world is much easier at 43, I think, than at 23 or 33.
Have you thought about what you would say to your 23-year-old self right now that you've, you know, gone to hell and back, really, but had this extraordinary career at the same time?
Yeah, I mean, look, everyone's going to have their day. And for me, my day happened in a very public forum. I screwed up in the biggest way, right? I came from, as a 17-year-old, I went to prom, and a few months later, I was in the major leagues. And while I was in the bus in Seattle, I remember I had a guy named Goose Gossage. Anyone heard of Goose? Now, Goose was my age. He was 43, and I was 18. Like, he had grandkids. And I'm talking to my mom, like, Mom, I didn't get any hits today. And I would go to the back of the bus and talk to her, and it was embarrassing. But I went from that, and I lived my entire life from there on. No college, no nothing, right? And my father left at 10, and part of the things that I worked on is I turned the lens inward, and I did a lot of work to really understand that hole that I had and what role that played in my mistakes and how do I fix that to be proactive and not make those mistakes again. That's why I think that entire year was almost necessary for me, forget baseball, to fix my life, to give me a chance to be a good father.
Do you think that anyone is capable of being redeemed? Do you think redemption is possible for anyone?
No, I don't. I don't know if people can stop and say, I'm sorry. I think that's very difficult for some people to do for whatever reason. It was extremely difficult for me to do when I was in my 20s, making $30 million a year, hitting 50 home runs a year. I thought that I walked on water. And what you realize is that we're all the same. And we all have the same pain and torture and doubts. And once I realized that I can come and say I'm sorry, it just is a paradigm shift. So I don't know if everyone can do that. And then you have to be willing to walk the walk, right? But it really starts with turning the lens inward and says, what role am I playing in my mistakes? And then really being proactive and not reactive.
How hard is it to say sorry? I mean, it's not something that men are usually encouraged to do as much as they should. But how hard was that for you?
You know what? It was hard for a long time until it wasn't. And once I got that call after 60 minutes from a gentleman that I really, really respect. He's one of my mentors, and he's knocking on 80 years old. And he said, Alex, I just saw the 60-minute piece. And I'm calling you because I love you. I'm calling you because you're not only going to ruin your baseball life and your legacy and your Hall of Fame, forget all of that. You're in the middle of ruining your entire life. And if you don't do something about it, I'm sorry for you. And it hit me like a bucket of cold water right in my face. For whatever reason, that sobered me up. And I couldn't sleep that night. And I woke up thinking like, I'm in over my head. And I better fix it one step at a time. And then Jim helped me put every lawsuit down one at a time and kind of started creating a path back for me to be able to live in this country again. That's how bad I felt, just to get back to par.
We really all need those people who will just tell it like it is and tell us straight up what we need to hear. And you're lucky that you had someone who was able to do that for you. I want to ask you, as an athlete, you get used to what it feels like to win and what it feels like to lose. Not that you like it, but how would you advise people out here to deal with failure?
Lean into it. Failing is okay. I mean, look, when people think about my career highlights, they immediately go to the 2009 World Championship or the home runs, the RBIs, but they forget to tell you that I'm 5th all time in the history of the game, 5th in strikeouts. So that means that only 4 people in the entire world of mankind has struck out more than me. which also means I have a PhD in failing. But I have a master's in getting up. And I always tell people that when I hire people, we have over 1,000 people now that work for our company. And when we hire people, we're always hiring. I was with Jennifer this morning at Stanford recruiting. And we look for people that have a PhD. And I don't mean a PhD from Harvard or Yale or Stanford. Those are great too. We mean poor, hungry, and driven. And to have the grit that is necessary, people you want in a foxhole with you when things get tough. And Jennifer and I are both come from immigrant parents that got here in the mid-'60s. We both were born in New York, both in our 40s, both have 2 children, both have been through a lot, and both are incredibly grateful to be able to talk about our mistakes, lead with our mistakes, and how do we learn from that and pivot. And I say lean into your mistakes. I think it's very important.
How do you evolve from Alex Rodriguez, the superstar baseball player, to Alex Rodriguez, the businessman?
I think there's a lot of correlations. I mean, it's incredibly I think athletes, we really like hiring former athletes because team sports and you have tough skin and you understand what it is to get up early and work late, and we don't look at a time clock. We have to get the job done. We have to win. So for me, again, it's really about taking your superpower and then match it up with someone's superpower that is complementary to yours. And that's what we've done. I mean, when you look at our office and you look at our executives, I think I hired 4 out of the 5 had never been to a Major League Baseball game in their entire life and do not know anything about baseball. And again, that to me means that I'm hiring the right people because I'm hiring them for the right reasons. And that's because of their skill and their grit and all of that.
You started your business when you were 26 years old. There are a lot of young entrepreneurs in this vast room. What insights would you share with the young business people here?
Repeat the first part of that question.
I was talking about how you started your business when you were 26. So what advice would you impart on the young entrepreneurs in the room?
I would say, again, lead with your passion. Lead with something you understand. For me, I was raised in a house, single mother who had 2 jobs. We never had enough money to buy a house, so we rented a house. We rented apartments. And we had to move every 18 months because the landlord would always raise the rents. And I remember praying for my mother and saying, boy, I wish that these days slew down. I knew it was every 30 days. It felt like every 3 days. And then I got down on my knees and I said, if I can ever trade places with the landlord and let him be the tenant and me be the landlord, I would love to do that. So the first chance I got a chance to invest in real estate, I bought a duplex, as you mentioned earlier, Lisa, and we took that from a duplex, we sold that, got a 4-plex, then I got 6. Then we grew that portfolio to about 12,000 apartment units in 14 states, and we have a fully integrated, very successful real estate company today. But the point is, it starts small. It started with a $48,000 down payment. I sold 3 Rolex, because what you do in Miami when you're a first-round pick is you buy a nice car and a Rolex. That's how we do it in Miami. Creativity when you invest.
Well, now that you have 500 employees and are invested in so many different things, how do you apply what happened to you to your businesses? Like that dark place that you went to, how do you apply that experience to how you run your businesses now? Yeah,
it's very helpful in every part of my life, right? I mean, number one is you have to be cautious. You have to play in the middle of the field. Warren Buffett says, my eyes are not that good, so I don't play in the sidelines, so let's stay away from the sidelines. There's plenty of money and things to do in the middle of the field. Lisa, we're also fortunate enough that we don't do things for money or just for money. I think when you do that and you chase just bottom lines, and I think that's one of the biggest challenges for public companies, that every quarter they have to come up with numbers. Not everything is measured in numbers, right? And all these macro trends, when you think about it, is we want to lead with process, and we feel if we have the great people and the right teams doing the right things, that process, the benefit would be great results. But it not maybe next quarter or next quarter, maybe the third quarter. And that doesn't mean we need to fire people because right is a big picture approach. And when we think about investing, we think about a 20-year horizon. And when you do that, it makes it a lot more fun, and I think it changes your prism and it gives you a competitive advantage versus people that have mandates of 3, 5, 7 years.
Alex Rodriguez, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know about you, but I could talk to Alex all day, but I know you have some people to get to. Say hi to Jenny for us.
Thank you.
Thank
you. I go this way or this way?
You'll go out that way.
This way?
Let's give it up for Alex Rodriguez, everyone. Love listening to him. All right, our next speaker has a truly inspiring story, and I met her backstage, and she is the loveliest, loveliest person. She grew up with a passion for snowboarding and dreamed of traveling the world. And despite obstacles that perhaps should have stopped her dead in her tracks, that passion carried over not only to the upper echelons of athletics, but onto the dance floor of Hollywood and beyond. Now, I'm not going to give away all of her story. I'll leave that up to her, but I will share that she is a New York Times bestselling author. She has toured with none other than Oprah. She has been featured in a Super Bowl commercial narrated by the legendary Muhammad Ali. And as of March of this year, she is now the most decorated snowboarder, Paralympic snowboarder in history. Indeed, there is never a dull moment for her. So please join me in welcoming the incomparable Amy Purdy.
Hello. Hi, you guys. Oh my gosh. Wow. Hi, how are you guys? Good. There's so many of you out there. So, have you ever been so excited for something? You planned perfectly, you visualized it, and everything turned out amazing, and then the day came and things didn't go quite as planned. Well, let me tell you, that was my day today. Okay, I was so excited to be here. I mean, look who I got to follow up, A-Rod. It's crazy. I was so excited to be here. And I woke up this morning and I meditated, which never happens, and I did yoga, which pretty much never happens either. And I was like, this is gonna be a good day. And I went and I washed my face and I looked in the mirror and I realized that I had a broken blood vessel in my eyeball. Like, not just a broken blood vessel, but it is like, this eye is like a bloodshot Halloween eye. Okay, and I knew that I was going to have my face like 15 feet on these screens today. And so not only do you guys get to be a little bit distracted by me walking around in bionic legs up here, but you also get to be distracted by this 1 foot tall bloodshot eye. So you might want to shut your eyes and listen to me talk instead of watching me today. But actually, that makes me think that in business and in life, we have to be flexible to change because you never know what your day has in store for you. And now that I have that out of the way, I have a question for all of you. If your life was a book and you were the author of that book, how would you want your story to go? I ask you this question because this is the question that changed my life forever. I grew up in the hot Las Vegas desert, and all I wanted was to be free. I would daydream about traveling the world, living in a place where it snowed, and I would picture all of these stories that I would go on to tell. At the age of 19, I actually moved to a place where it snowed. I moved to Salt Lake City, Utah, where I became a massage therapist. Yeah! And I became a massage therapist because all I needed were my hands and my massage table by my side, and I could go anywhere. For the first time ever, I felt free, independent, and completely in control of my life. In fact, I remember telling my mom, I feel like I'm on top of the world. I love my job, I'm making good money, I'm traveling, and I'm saving up so I can travel. I feel like I'm on top of the world. And then suddenly, my life took a detour. I went home from work one day with what I thought was the flu, and less than 24 hours later, I was in the hospital on life support, and I was given less than a 2% chance of living. And it wasn't until 5 days later, as I lay in a coma, that the doctors diagnosed me with something called meningococcal meningitis. And we have no idea how I got it. All we know is this bacteria lives on your nose and your mouth, and it spread like the flu or the cold. So for all I know, somebody could have sneezed on me when I was in the elevator at work, and maybe that's how I got it. But due to this little microscopic bacteria, over the course of 2.5 months, I ended up losing my spleen, I lost my kidney function, I lost the hearing in my left ear, and due to the septic shock that my body went into, I ended up losing both of my legs below the knees. my life changed like that. I went from being a normal 19-year-old who could throw on a dress and a pair of flip-flops and run out the door without a care in the world, to now relying on machines, mechanics, and medical innovation in order to live and in order to even survive. I remember when my friends and my family wheeled me out of the hospital, I felt like I had just been pieced back together like a patchwork doll. I had so many surgeries. And I thought that the worst was over. That is, until I saw my new legs for the very first time. They were these bulky blocks of metal with pipes bolted together for the ankles. They were hideous. They looked like they were straight out of the Home Depot plumbing department. And I remember my prosthetist walking in with these legs in his arms, and I thought to myself, there's absolutely no way, there is no way that those are going to be my legs for the rest of my life. And with my mom by my side and tears just streaming down our faces, I strapped on these chunky legs and I stood up. And they were so painful and so confining that all I could think was, how am I going to travel the world in these things? How was I ever going to live this life full of adventure and stories as I always wanted? And how was I going to snowboard again? This day, I went home, I crawled into bed, and this is what my life looked like for the next few months. Me, passed out, just escaping from reality with these beastly legs resting by my side. I was absolutely, physically and emotionally broken. The thought of living the rest of my life with these hunks of hardware as my legs was devastating. But little did I know at that time that my biggest loss, my legs, would eventually become my biggest asset. And just as I started to get used to this new body and this new way of life, I found out that I had yet another mountain to climb when I found out that my kidneys had failed to heal on their own. And my reaction, I lost it. I screamed words that I could never repeat up here on stage. I pleaded with God, Buddha, Mother Nature, Mr. Universe, whoever is out there and holds the power to please, please make my kidneys come back, because I was not going to have a kidney transplant. I just went through losing both of my legs, and I thought, this is the kind of stuff that happens to people on Oprah. Not me. We were doing everything we could to boost my immune system so I would never contract something like meningitis again. Yet with a kidney transplant, I would have to take immune suppressive medication for the rest of my life. To say that it was a catch-22 and to say that I was completely heartbroken would be an understatement. However, it was times like these, times that I had absolutely zero control over, that first prompted me to ask myself that really important question. If my life was a book, and I was the author of that book, how would I want my story to go? And this question allowed me to daydream again, just as I did as a little girl. And first of all, it allowed me to think of what I didn't want. And what I didn't want is I didn't want people to feel sorry for me. And what I didn't want is people to label me as this girl who's handicapped or this girl who has a disability. That's what I didn't want. And so it allowed me to think of, well, what is it that I do want? And I saw myself walking gracefully. And I saw myself somehow helping other people through my journey. And I saw myself snowboarding again. And I didn't just see myself carving down this mountain of powder. I visualized it so strongly that I could actually feel it. I could feel the wind against my face and the beat of my racing heart as if it was happening in that very moment. And that passion and that fire that I felt inside, that is when a new chapter of my life began. 4 months later, I was back up on a snowboard, 4 months after losing my legs, although Things didn't go quite as expected. My knees and my ankles wouldn't bend. And at one point, I was kind of carving down the mountain on my heel side, and I thought, okay, everything's going to be fine. And then I went over to carve to my toe side, and I shot down the mountain. I hit a bump. My goggles went one way, my gloves went the other way, and my legs, still attached to the snowboard, went flying. Flying down the mountain, and meanwhile, I'm still sitting up on top of the mountain, completely embarrassed, which I actually heard a lady scream from the chairlift, which is like the last thing you ever want to see when you learn to ski or snowboard, is somebody just break into pieces, which I'm sure she racked up years of therapy bills after that. But I remember sitting there thinking, okay, well, I didn't see that coming. And I was so discouraged. But I thought, okay, this is why you don't see double leg amputees snowboarding down the mountain every day. But I thought, if I can figure out a way to get my ankles to bend in the way that I need them to, if I can figure out a way to keep these detachable body parts attached to my body, then maybe I can do this again. And this is when I learned that the borders and the obstacles in our lives can only do two things. One, stop us dead in our tracks, or two, force us to get creative. This day, I went home. I ended up doing a year of research trying to figure out what kind of legs were out there. I called every adaptive ski school across the country, and I heard the same thing, that you should just take your legs off and sit in a monoski. And I remember saying, I want to use my legs. I want to figure this out. And so my leg maker and we decided to make a pair of legs ourselves. We took random parts and pieces, and we made a pair of feet. And these feet have rubber, wood, and neon pink duct tape. And yes, I painted the toenails as well. And believe it or not, these feet worked like a charm. It was these feet and the best 21st birthday gift I could ever receive, a new kidney from my dad, that allowed me to snowboard again and allowed me to follow my dreams again. And I went back to work, and then I went back to school, and then my husband and we started a nonprofit organization called Adaptive Action Sports, where we get youth, young adults, and wounded vets with permanent physical disabilities involved in action sports, like snowboarding and skateboarding. From the very beginning, we had a pretty hefty goal. We wanted to try to get snowboarding into the Paralympic Games, because snowboarding was in the Olympic Games, so why wasn't it in the Paralympic Games? The Paralympics are the adaptive division of the Olympic Games. And after many years of blood, sweat, and tears and being turned down over and over again, we were able to do just that when we found out that snowboarding would be a part of the 2014 Paralympic Games for the very first time. Thank you. Thank you. And now that the race to get snowboarding into the Paralympics was over, I then began the race to make the first ever US Paralympic snowboard team. So I made it my mission to train around the clock. I was working on tools, mechanics, my legs. I was the only double-leg amputee competitive snowboarder worldwide, and I was competing against girls who had their legs or who had at least one leg. And by them having just one human dynamic foot, they had such an advantage over me, because the human foot has 150 bones and muscles for jumping and balancing, and I only have one piece of carbon fiber. So I had to work harder than everybody else. And over the course of about 18 months, I ended up gaining 20 pounds of muscle. I made the US snowboard team, and I headed to Sochi, Russia, where I'm honored to say that I became the first female to ever bring home a bronze medal in Paralympic snowboarding. Thank you. And then just this past year, I decided to do my second Paralympic Games, where I brought home 2 more medals, another bronze, which I like to call my rose gold, because I don't look good in yellow gold, so maybe rose gold fits a little bit more, but a rose gold, and then I also brought home a silver medal as well. But what's even better than that is that our organization was able to train and put 7 out of the 13 athletes onto the US snowboard team. And altogether, the athletes from our organization was able to bring home 7 Olympic medals for our country. Thank you. And none of this would have happened if we didn't put a strong team together that supported us. From our coaches to our athletes to our sponsors to our supporters to people like you in the audience today. Small business owners who believed in us, from our accountant to our bookkeeper. In fact, we highly rely on QuickBooks in order to keep our organization on track. And when I called our bookkeeper, today, and when I say bookkeeper, what I really mean is my 75-year-old mother-in-law. She's actually not even a bookkeeper, but she's turned into one. So when I called our bookkeeper and I called my mother-in-law and I told her that I was going to be here today speaking, she said, "Oh my gosh, you have to tell QuickBooks they have the best customer service ever." So there you go. And she also said, "And please tell them I'm tired and I'm ready to retire." So it looks like we're going to be in need of a bookkeeper sometime soon. Okay, I was going to say, but I can't help but to feel that I'm in the right place. So you guys know, really, that we are going to be looking for that. So I just wanted to say thank you. Thank you to the bookkeepers, the audience. Thank you to QuickBooks. Thank you to the accountants in the audience. Because you doing the work that you do allows people like me and small businesses and organizations to do the work that we're supposed to do. It's symbiotic. We all need each other. Thank you. And what that support has allowed me to do is it's taken me to places that I never could have imagined I could ever go. About 2 weeks before going to Sochi, Russia for my first Paralympic Games, I was invited to be on the TV show Dancing with the Stars. And why I said yes, I have no idea. You guys, I was a nervous wreck after I said yes because I had 0 dance experience, unless you want to count the country clog dancing I did with my sister as a kid. And listen to this, I tried out for my high school dance team and I didn't make it. And that's when I had legs. So now I'm going to do Dancing with the Stars without legs. I thought this is going to be so interesting. And I remember, I didn't even see the TV show before. I remember flipping through the channels and seeing the show and always seeing these celebrities cry as if dancing the cha-cha was the hardest thing they've ever done in their life. But before I knew it, I was in Sochi. I was snowboarding for 4 hours each morning, and then I would dance for 4 hours each night with my partner, Derek Huff. You have some Derek fans. And by the way, the other celebrities on the show, they had 3 weeks to prepare for their very first dance. Derek and I only had 3 half days because it overlapped with the Paralympic Games. So after I won my medal, I literally stepped off of the podium and onto the airplane. I traveled 24 hours. I stepped off the airplane, went straight into the studio, and before I knew it, 72 hours after I competed in my Paralympic sport, I was live in front of a studio audience, 4 judges, and millions of viewers dancing the cha-cha-cha. And now, I knew firsthand why I had seen all those other celebrities cry, because it was by far the hardest thing that I'd ever put myself through. And going on to the show, I had a lot of concerns for myself. I didn't know if my legs would move in the way that I needed them to. And at one point, I remember watching some of the other dancers move so quickly across the dance floor and just glide so gracefully that my heart sank. And I secretly thought to myself, there is absolutely no way that I'm going to be able to do this. Yet somehow, each and every week, we managed to find a way. Every Tuesday, we would get our new dance style, we would get our new dance song, and pretty quickly we realized that my everyday walking legs just weren't going to work. They weren't going to move in the way that I need them to. So luckily, I had my leg maker on speed dial, and nearly each and every week, he would overnight a pair of feet, all in the hopes that they would move in the way that I need them to. But because there are no feet that are made for the cha-cha, there are no feet out there that are made for the salsa, we had to get really, really creative. So for example, there were some of the dances that we did, like this one, where you need to be able to really bend your knees and shake your hips, and I realized that was impossible to do in the feet that I was currently in. And so I ordered these feet from a magazine. These are basically mannequin feet. They are made of foam and wood, and that's it. But I realized that when I balanced on the balls of my feet, that I was able to move my hips and bend my knees. And then there are other dances like this one, the Argentine tango, where you need to be able to point your toes. And that is impossible for me to do. And actually, that was one of my biggest fears going onto the show was, how am I going to be able to point my toes? Like, that's what dancers do. And if they're supposed to point their toes, I want to be able to point my toes. And then I remembered seeing these feet in a magazine. They're swimming feet. And so I called up the company, and they overnighted the feet to me. And I realized that I could balance on the very tips of my toes. In fact, I balanced on about 1 inch by 1/4 of an inch. And it was able to give me that pointed toe look and those long lines that I was supposed to have. And then we made it towards the end of the show, and we thought that we were done because we needed to do a dance where you glide gracefully across the dance floor. And we knew that the feet that I had just weren't going to work. And then my husband reminded me that I had a pair of running blades that were in the closet just collecting dust. So he overnighted those to me. And I have a video that I want to show you of how that dance went. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. So basically, each and every week, we had a problem to solve. But by being determined to solve that problem, I think we grew more creatively and became more resilient than either of us ever could have imagined. And in the end, all of our hard work paid off when we came in second place, just behind an Olympic gold medalist ice dancer, which is not, yeah, sorry. Thank you. And just last night when I was thinking about this talk, I thought about the different things that I've done. And I thought that, you know, my biggest weakness, my legs, eventually became my biggest strength because I focused on what I had. And I know that today was all about anything is possible, but I don't actually believe that anything is possible. But I do believe that if you focus on what you have, what you uniquely have, and you create a strong team around you, and you pick yourself up and you keep on going every single time you fall, that the possibilities of what we can achieve are endless. You know, when I was young, thank you. When I was young, if somebody had told me that at the age of 19, that I was going to lose my legs, that I was going to lose my kidneys, that I was going to lose the life that I knew, I would have said, because I believed it at that time, that there's absolutely no way that I would be able to handle that. You know, we may think that life would be easier without all of the change and without all of the challenge that comes our way, but I've learned that it's that change and it's that challenge that forces us to figure out what we're really made of. It makes us dig deep. It makes us find our fire, and it makes us get creative, because that's the only way to reach beyond the reality of this current moment, is by accepting what is, but most importantly, daydreaming of what can be. 19 years ago, when I lost my legs, I had no idea what to expect. But if you asked me today if I'd ever want to change my situation, I would tell you no. Because my legs haven't disabled me. If anything, they enabled me. They forced me to rely on my imagination and to believe in the possibilities. And I believe that our imaginations are huge tools for breaking through all the borders in our lives, because in our minds, we can do anything, and we can be anything. It's believing in our dreams and facing our fears head on that allows us to live our lives beyond our limits. So a thought that I would like to leave with you today is that maybe instead of looking at all of our challenges and all of our obstacles as something that's negative or bad, maybe we can look at them as blessings, as these magnificent little gifts that can be used to ignite our imaginations and help us go further than we ever knew we could go. Because it's not about breaking through the borders of our lives, and it's not even about overcoming our obstacles. It's about using them. It's about pushing off of them and seeing what amazing places they might bring us. Now, I'd like to ask you guys the question that I asked at the very beginning. If your life was a book and you were the author, how would you want your story to go? Thank you guys so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy. Isn't she extraordinary? And man, she can dance her butt off with those running blades. That was crazy. Wow. Well, the day is not over yet. Next up on the stage, I'd like to introduce you to one of the hardest working self-employed entrepreneurs in the entertainment industry. As you may remember, Mindy Kaling rose to fame on the workplace sitcom The Office. She also wrote, starred, and executive produced her own Fox Hulu series, The Mindy Project, for which she received multiple nominations for her contributions in writing and acting. She's also written 2 books and starred in movies like Inside Out, Ocean's 8, and A Wrinkle in Time. She has plenty to share about being a businesswoman and independent artist juggling multiple disciplines and interests. So let's bring out our final speaker, Miss Mindy Kaling.
Hi.
It's a long walk.
How's it going?
Thank you, Mindy. Thank you so much for being here.
I'm so happy to be here. Amy's so inspirational.
Isn't Amy incredible?
Unbelievable.
Well, you know, this morning I told the audience that I used to aspire to have a career like Connie Chung's because she was the only one out there. So from one Asian woman to another, I just have to say, it's so amazing to have you out there. Thank you for everything that you do.
Oh my God, that means so much coming from you. You're so impressive. Thank you.
Well, one of the things you're known for, obviously, is your work on The Office. But what many people may not realize is that you were the only female writer on that show and went on to become an executive producer. So what was that like to navigate that environment as a young writer?
I would say that I was filled with terror. I don't come from a family with any Hollywood connections. I didn't go to a school where, you know, it was all teed up that you'd go out to Hollywood. I had no friends in Los Angeles. And it was really terrifying. To add to that, in 2004, when I started working on The Office, it was not like now where there's like literally hundreds of great sitcoms. It was actually the death of sitcoms. Seinfeld had ended. The only 2 sitcoms on were Will and Grace. And it was Will and Grace and a couple animated shows. So there were no shows to work on. And then when I got hired on The Office, people probably don't remember this, but it was largely disliked and the ratings were terrible. So while it was challenging because, obviously I didn't see many people who looked like me working in the business, it was also just incredibly terrifying because, our show at that time, it started at a very low rating, and the first season had 6 episodes, and each subsequent Tuesday when it aired, it would go down like 25%. So by the end of the 6-episode run, which is already, like, if you get 6 episodes of TV, it's a really bad sign. I had written the last episode, and the ratings were so low that they didn't even email them out, because it was just, it was seen as such a failure. So that was the most terrifying thing, actually, is to work on a show that was not an instant hit. And then, but the environment on the show, and I have to say, I was very lucky. I worked with all men, but they're, to use a very 2015 term, they're very woke. I think that they were terrified of offending me, which was, now looking back at it, insane, because I was just grateful to have a job, but I benefited from that, I think. And so it was a small writer's room, but I felt very heard, which I know is not always every woman's experience in Hollywood.
And then The Office went on to become a massive success. So glad you got through that
Yes.
little patch. You have an interesting take on confidence and hard work that I think our audience would really appreciate. Can you kind of give us a sense of that take?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in speaking to this group in particular, I would say that most people in this room have sort of outsized confidence. I mean, most of you own your own small businesses, and the odds are so against you that the fact that you want to even go down that line of work and be your own employer is already, I'm sort of speaking to the converted here, but my sense of confidence is really from the comedian Kevin Hart. And Kevin Hart, on his Twitter page, and I follow him on Twitter, has, and he's an incredibly confident guy. You might even say that he's cocky. On his Instagram, he'll have a handsome photo of himself where he looks amazing in expensive clothes, and his hashtag is comedic rock star shit. That's his hashtag. And it's true, and it's incredibly confident. And the reason I like him a lot is that on his Twitter bio says, "My name is Kevin Hart, and I, all caps, work hard. Everybody wants to be famous, and nobody wants to do the work." And what I love about that is that we're in a time right now where, especially with young women, we want to tell people, young women, hey, have confidence, have confidence. And the thing that I always feel, and it's a little bit controversial, is that I don't believe in innate confidence. I don't believe in it, and I don't think it's useful for young people. I think hard work is useful. And I think hard work, thank you. I think that, I guess I don't understand innate confidence, because I think, why should anyone be confident unless they've done the hard work to do that? And if you look at Kevin Hart, he didn't come from a lot of money. He came from a tough part of Philadelphia, and he just worked and worked. And he is a movie star, and he's shorter than me. And that is just because he is really talented and he really worked hard. So to me, that has always been the advice that I give to particularly young people about confidence.
So just keep it in check.
Keep it in check, and also, like, you have to back it up, know, and that's just not something you really see, particularly in like social media culture, is that everyone is sort of like, you get to have like a confidence card just for existing, and I don't think that's true.
People brag in social media? Mindy, you've faced a lot of adversity during your career. In fact, at one point, you even got turned down to play yourself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
Okay, so in one of the more humiliating things that I think has ever happened to any person, when I was 24 and I moved from New York to Los Angeles, I moved out with my acting and writing partner, and we had written a pilot called Mindy and Brenda, which we named Mindy and Brenda because they were our names, obviously, but we also thought, oh, then we'll have to play the parts because we wrote it and named it after ourselves. Not the case. As it turns out, we were told that we would have to audition to play our roles, and which is excruciating. And so I had to sit holding audition lines that I had written next to a row of much more beautiful, skinny women, Indian women. And I didn't even get the part. So I went in an audition, and I was deemed not credible enough to play Mindy. So this is something that happened when I was 24, and I remember taking it so hard because I thought, okay, well, what I should have been skinnier. I looked at the girls. They were all kind of the more palatable-looking Indian women, which is they looked like Princess Jasmine. Or they were so light-skinned that they were basically white, but they happened to have dark hair. And I remember thinking, okay, so this is what LA, this is what Hollywood wants, this is what you need to do to make it. And I had written this part for myself. And then it was literally just at that lowest low, and I was like, I should move back to Boston and work in my mom's doctor's office as a receptionist, that I got hired on The Office, which was a show that didn't care about how people looked. And that was really one of the biggest switches in my life, of like the lowest low to working on that great show.
So who got the part to play Mindy?
I don't want to say her name, but she's actually a very nice person and a great actress, but
Someone who didn't look like you.
Someone who didn't look like me.
Yeah, okay, I could see how you could be annoyed by that. On top of being a successful actress and writer and producer, 2-time New York Times bestselling author, and a 1% owner of a Welsh soccer team.
Yeah.
You are also a mother. How do you balance everything?
Well, I think you must all face this, and I think you face this. When you have a child and you have ambition, and there's a lot of different things you want to do, you ultimately don't balance anything. You just end up doing a couple of them badly. And I think that you just do a couple of them badly for a while, and being a successful person is knowing when you have to kind of switch over before that one thing decides they're either going to fire you or your child's going to stop looking at you, or and it's just doing that until you can't get away with it anymore, and then switching over. And that's, I think, what it is. And then sometimes it doesn't work. And but I have now, after balancing these things, and I just had my baby's 10 months old, so I'm still figuring it out.
Congratulations.
Oh, thank you so much. I like that I can still get congratulations for having a child 10 months ago. That's great. But it's kind of not balancing, and kind of being okay with it, and then surrounding myself with people who can help me pick up the slack to make it look seamless.
I totally agree with you. This idea of balance that we get fixated on is kind of not really possible.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
But it's still, having a packed life, and it's hard when, if you are all very ambitious people, but you also, probably a lot of you want to be in loving relationships and have children, and I think that the people closest to you have to sort of understand that. My daughter is going to have to understand that the way that I understood that about my own mother. And so I know there's challenges ahead, but I also think that you can be a good role model as long as you keeping the unbalance slightly not levered in too much of one direction.
So there are a lot of people here who are contemplating doing something out of the ordinary. What advice would you give people here who are interested in doing something completely new and maybe really uncomfortable?
So what took me a long time to learn about my professional career, and I think this applies even if you're not a writer or performer, is that every day the challenge you have in front of you is to try to become more of yourself. If every day you're just trying to become the more authentic version of yourself, if every day you try to get 5% closer, then you can never do wrong, right? Because then no matter what, you're always just trying to be yourself. And then if you start your own business, or like I do, I have only ever worked for myself and written my own lines and done my own parts, that you can never fail because you're only ever trying to be closer and closer to what your essence is, which can change. But to me, that's what it's always been. And for younger people, I've noticed there is a kind of an obsession with a brand. And I completely understand that, and even I acquiesce now, I have a brand. But I think that the brand comes second. Establishing a brand is kind of after you are just doing what your life's mission is and trying to fulfill that every day. And then the brand just reveals itself.
I'm just curious, now given your extraordinary success, what would you say to those producers who wouldn't allow you to play yourself?
Oh, I'm very petty. I would be like, screw you, look at me now.
How you like me now?
How do you like me now? Suck on that. It's funny, the pilot I did was for the CW, And it was for the WB, which then later kind of got disbanded. And I remember The Office was like in its 3rd season, and the WB went out of business. And I just thought it was so delicious. And my writer friends in The Office like came in with the news, like, oh, they disbanded the network. And they're like, that is incredibly petty. You're doing very well. You don't need to enjoy the downfall of the network that didn't pick up your pilot when you weren't even well known. I was like, I don't want to hear it. I'm just happy. But yes, that's probably what I would say.
Did you think about them when you sold the Mindy project?
You know, I always have a little chip on my shoulder, and so I think like most people, when I succeed, I mean, I don't act on it, but I do always think about every small slight I've ever had. And it keeps me going.
Sometimes that can drive you.
It can drive you.
Yeah.
It's not like all of the fuel that keeps me going. It's, the wanting to be a role model for my daughter and for young women and all that. But a little bit is everyone who ever underestimated me.
Yeah. I mean,
right?
I think that's I think that's fair, to those people who doubted you. Success is in a way the best revenge.
Yes, it is.
We are giving you good advice today, trust me. What's next for you, Mindy? What can we expect from Mindy Kaling?
Oh my gosh, to go from Amy to this, it's like 2 very different kinds of speakers.
No, but I do think that's a good driver. When people doubt you, it makes you want to work harder.
Yes.
To achieve what people doubted you were able to do.
Definitely, yeah.
Okay, we're turning it around. So, so what is next for you?
Well, I am moving to London to work on an adaptation of the movie Four Weddings and a Funeral. I'm turning it into a miniseries, and so I'm going to go do that. And then I wrote a movie for Emma Thompson and me that's going to come out next year, which is exciting. Thank you. So I'm doing a lot of producing and writing and doing more movie stuff. But what I'm really trying to do now, especially because of my daughter, is I want to search for the next project, whether it's a TV show or a book or whatever, where I can really be used well. Like I want now for whatever I do next, to have meaning. I'm kind of past the time when it's enough for me to go out and just kind of be like, okay, I looked cute and I sounded funny and that was good. Like I think I'm now really thinking about what my legacy would be, and I choose my projects kind of accordingly.
And how has your daughter, or having your daughter, changed the way you conduct business?
I think, and this is probably for most parents out there, it's made me more impatient, I think, with my work, and I've become, I'm just better at time management, I think, than I have been before. And it's sort of like what I was saying before, it's made me incredibly choosy about what I'm doing. But at the same time, it's also made me have a real, I don't know if you had this feeling, but I'm a single mom, and if you're the breadwinner in your family, you also have, when you have your child, it's like, oh, this is amazing, I love this creature so much, and then you're so filled with terror to provide for them. And so while I'm also being like, oh, I'll be choosy, I just am like, I'm so much better about saving, and I think about, I subtract from the time when I think I'm gonna die, how much money I think I can make until then. I don't know if anyone else does that, but the minute you have a child, you start thinking about your mortality more, and just how much, I'm much smarter with my money and investing, which I was not before.
What would you say is the best advice you've ever received, and what's, what kind of advice would you impart on this audience?
Let's see. I think the best advice that I received was from Oprah Winfrey.
I've heard of her.
Yes, unsurprisingly. And she gave lots of great advice, but I think the one that I think about all the time is that the universe first talks to you in a whisper, and it keeps getting louder until you hear the message. And that really resonated for me, because I think for most of my 20s and some of my 30s, the universe had to scream in my face for me to get the message. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that, I have to be, when the universe is whispering something to me, now I'm a little bit more intuitive about whether it's a business relationship or a personal relationship. The other thing she said, which is it doesn't seem profound, but I think is a great piece of advice. And she told me this in New Zealand when we were standing on top of a hill by a lake. So it seems like a fever dream of me and Oprah, but it was one of the most inspiring little moments is that she said that a mistake can never be a failure if you learn from it, but if you don't learn from your mistake, then it is a failure. And I have failed. I have made so many mistakes, and at the beginning they were true failures, and over time I have felt that I have been able to manage to turn a mistake. I have managed to stop it from being a failure and to learn from it. So that was very valuable, and I think that's really good advice for young people.
Absolutely, absolutely. And we've heard this theme throughout the day, so thank you for sharing that. Mindy Kaling, thank you so much for being
Thank you,
here.
Lisa.
And on behalf of everyone here, we're just such huge fans of yours, and we can't wait to see what you're up to next. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
What an incredible day we've had today. Thank you all so much for being such an incredible audience. That is it for me. I would like to welcome the one and only Sasan back to the stage. Thank you very much, everyone.
Please welcome to the stage Executive Vice President and
Thank you.
General Manager of Intuit QuickBooks, Sasan Gadarzi.
What did you guys think about today? One more time. One more time. All right, awesome. So, for those of you that have been with us all 5 years of QuickBooks Connect, can you stand up and let's shine the light on you? So, for those of you that have been with us all 5 years, we are doing a special toast for you in the pavilion. And then you can join everybody else where we will have some drinks in the exhibit hall. And do not miss the party tonight at 7 o'clock. So see you all then.